Pat Mayo Hour.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Hour UFC Mexico City DraftKings picks. If you're looking for UFC 205, we're going to be on that. That's actually going to be a full show. This Mexico City scrub card? No, we're just going to give you some picks and get to rosters. Cody Saftik, the Fight Network, and Bookie Beatdown. Let's get to the cast roster. Right now, we're going to try to pound this out quickly so we can get to the full, good show.
Yeah, well, hey, Fight Night Mexico City, Pat, still a good show, but we'll jump right into it.
Is it a good show?
Yeah, I think it's a great fight. The one thing I'm going to, give the disclaimer right off the hop, this is a tough card. This is a tough card because there's a lot of fights where both guys conceivably have a good shot. Also, you don't see 6 easy finishes on this card. You might see a couple finishes that you like, but as a whole, there's not easy finishes. And for the first time in a long time, and we're going to get into it in a moment here when I get down to the cash game and the GPP, I went against myself on some of the GPP picks because they're wild and they're crazy, but on cash games, I like them to actually get the job done. So we'll get that down. Alexa Grasso, first and foremost, you're not going to go against her in any sense of the word. $9,300. She's a former Invicta champion. This girl is from Mexico. She's making her official UFC debut. She's a stud in any sense of the word, Pat. She's very, very, very talented girl. Comes from a boxing background. Trains with a good Mexican gym, Entrum. And she's on fire. Her biggest thing is punch output. So her last 2 fights have actually gone 25 minutes. She did not get the finish, which is why I'm definitely seeing her more as a cash game play. But she's somebody with her punch output and her ability to sustain that pace throughout, the course of, in this case, 15 minutes instead of 25 minutes. She should have even more energy. And the 2 last points on why I really like her. First of all, it being at Mexico City, which is 10,000 feet above sea level.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Was it Cain Velasquez or Diego Sanchez the last time I was here just gassed?
Yeah, Cain Velasquez. That's like the infamous go out a couple months in advance and get acclimated. Fortunately, these people don't have enough money to go there and get properly acclimated. So what you end up doing is you end up going a week, maybe 2 weeks out tops, and your body, you tell yourself mentally that you're good, but physically, you're just not all there. When I look at Alexa Grasso, this is someone who has lived in this country her entire life. So she's young, she's got great gas tank, she's used to going 5 rounds, and she's from the area. So right away, her gas tank's going to check out. Heather Jo Clark, it's not that she gasses, but one, now you're putting her 10,000 feet up. The second thing is that she is so extremely hittable, Pat. Just unbelievably hittable. Good chin, but very hittable. And I see in this spot, Alexa Grasso should probably just piece her up for the course of 15 minutes. There's a possibility for the finish, but I don't really feel it.
Yeah, but, cash games, now that it's up to 6 on DraftKings, we're going to be fine with that. So she's the second most expensive fighter on the card. Enrique Barzola is the most expensive, and he's on your team too.
Yeah, Enrique Barzola, this guy's a very tough fighter. He ended up winning Tough Latin America, I believe, Season 2, and he beat Horacio Gutierrez in the finals. Now, in that fight with Gutierrez, he seemed very raw, but first of all, his gas tank and his ability to just keep going, his tenacity, his will to win was unbelievable. And he used a lot of wrestling to win that fight.
Wrestling?
Wrestling. Over and over again. Use that wrestling, take him down. Rinse and repeat, take him down. If this guy managed to get back up, no problem. Take him back down. That's what he did the whole time. So now he draws a much tougher fight in a sophomore outing for the UFC against Kyle Bochniak. He takes that fight in Vancouver over the summertime. He goes out there. Bochniak is a very tough fighter. And the biggest thing here with Barzola is he's viewed as a one-dimensional wrestler. He gets away from that, and he starts showcasing his striking skills. Guy's 27 years old. He's training very hard. Spent some time at American Top Team in Coconut Creek, Florida, and his striking's getting better. So he gets flat-rod by Bochniak. I mean, he should have won. I had bet Bochniak, so I ain't one to complain. But very much so, the guy got robbed. So now you're sending him to Mexico City. You're going to try to give him a little bit of a showcase fight. And he's actually getting what could possibly be the worst guy in the UFC's 145-pound division. Not because there's anything necessarily wrong with him per se, but he's just so young. And so Chris Avila is Nate Diaz's guy. Nate Diaz, when Nate Diaz is going to fight Conor McGregor, gets this big pay-per-view spot and gets a teammate of his on the undercard, like first fight of the night. Conor McGregor gets a teammate and puts him on the undercard. It's a nice little McGregor's guy versus Nate Diaz's guy. Wet your palate a little bit before the main event. So McGregor's guy's pro record was 10 wins and 11 losses, and he beat the shit out of this guy, okay? Easy. So now I look at Barzola and I think, you know what? Barzola's actually better than Artem Lobov. His striking's improving. His ground game's better. Avila's going to be a survivor. His ability to survive. He's a jiu-jitsu guy. He's going to spend some time on his back. He's got a long reach, but it didn't help him against Lobov, and I don't think it's going to help him here. So I think he gets chewed up. But once again, I don't really see the finish. So Barzola's $9,500, and that's very expensive. But for that price, you want to finish. And Avila's a tough kid.
But it's probably a win by decision then, although win by decisions now under the new DraftKings scoring are a bit more, so that's better for cash games. But I see that he's not on your GPP team.
No, because he's expensive, so I want to try to get somebody in that has a better shot of finishing. And the thing is that in his first fight in the UFC, that Horacio Gutierrez fight, he had his way with him, Pat. he had his way with him. It was like a full-grown man against a child. There was just nothing that Horatio Gutierrez could do. And still, he didn't finish. He, in fact, didn't even really come all that close to finishing. So, of pure domination is not getting him in a spot to finish. His next fight against Bochniak, he didn't really seem close to finishing. When I look at that, and he hurt him, but I think to myself, this guy's not a finisher just yet. He'll eventually become one, and Avila's a young guy that you can take advantage of, but his jiu-jitsu acumen and his pedigree is going to probably likely suggest that he's going to survive this.
All right, so the rest of your team, let's only talk about one of these guys since we're way behind pace for what's supposed to be a very quick thing. So read off the rest four, and I want to talk about Tony Ferguson for a second.
Okay, I'll just give you a quick bullet point then. Ricardo Lamas, black belt. Charles Oliveira, black belt. Charles Oliveira needs to finish in the first round. He's even said it. He gasses out all the time. He won't get the finish in the first round. Lamas takes him to deep waters, takes him out. Diego Sanchez, $7,200. This guy's very big value price. He's not going to finish. That's the problem. Marcin Held's a jiu-jitsu guy. Diego Sanchez has been fighting since 2004. He's had 25 fights in the UFC. He's never been submitted. Marcin Held can only win by submission. He's a one-trick pony, and that one trick's probably not going to work here. So we're going to like Diego Sanchez, $7,200. Jason Pepsi Novelli, $7,300. This one's a bit of a risk considering it's a cash game team, but he's a $7,300 play. He's a little bit older, just made his UFC debut last time out and got smoked. So people are going to underestimate this guy. He's taking on Polo Reyes, who we talked about. This guy's fun and he's exciting and he's so unbelievably I'm not going to say unskilled, but he's just got such massive flaws in his design, and he's an action fighter. Novelli has been knocked out, so people are going to definitely go towards Polo Reyes. This guy used to work out at Team Quest. He's a good wrestler. He's from Oregon. He gets this fight to the ground, which I think he'll be able to ride it out. So these are cash game plays for the most part. Tony Ferguson is not a cash game play.
You have him on both.
I have him on both.
Why?
I need to finish. First and foremost, if I'm even looking at my cash games team, I still do need somebody to finish. Tony Ferguson is by no means a lock. I know I'm putting him on cash game and GPP suggests he's a lock, but Pat, the way this guy fights, I want Tony Ferguson. On a GPP, he's just going to go for it. On a cash game team, the guy is very, very durable, right? You're not just going to go out there and knock out Tony Ferguson. You're not going to go out there and submit Tony Ferguson. When you look at his entire body work in the UFC, nobody just goes out there and owns Tony Ferguson. That's not something that happens. I don't expect that Rafael dos Anjos is going to come on there and own Tony Ferguson. So Tony Ferguson's got 25 minutes to work with. If he only gets 3 rounds, the way the guy fights, his pace, he'll get as many points as you could want him to get in those 3 rounds. He's not going to get finished, so it likely goes 5. And I really just get a gut feeling he puts away RDA because he's going to create that same chaotic environment that he always does, which creates massive hazards for RDA. And RDA coming off the first knockout loss of his career, certainly in the UFC, getting knocked out by Eddie Alvarez in spectacular fashion, I don't know where his chin's at. And if this guy's going to get into the same chaotic situation against Tony Ferguson that he did against Eddie Alvarez, I seen what happened. So 25 minutes at altitude is going to help him out. But Tony Ferguson's not one in gas. This is a great fight. It's a fantastic fight, fantastic matchmaking. Winner of this gets a title shot. And I think RDA might slowly be on his way down. Tony Ferguson is definitely on his way up.
So, on terms of the GPP team, you have Tony Ferguson on there as well. You have Grasso and Lamas, but you have Polo Reyes.
Yeah, because he goes for it, man. This guy had like a fight of the year his last time out against Dun Yun Kim. Not that Dun Yun Kim, Maestro Dun Yun Kim.
Which Dun Yun? Was it the one that I had on all of my teams, and he tried to do this in slow motion and basically got knocked out? Was it that guy?
Well, this guy did pretty much that in somewhat slow motion, but it went 3 rounds, and they both beat the shit out of each other. They just both went at it like dogs the entire time. It was fight of the night. It was kicking off the card, but you really got to see in Polo Reyes that he's very young, he's very raw, and he's someone that wants it. But seeing all these technical errors he makes, you really got to think, how much has he improved since his last performance? Now, probably quite a bit because he's training at Alliance alongside Dominic Cruz, and he's one of the guys, because he's a 35er, he's going to get good rounds in with Dominic Cruz. But that being said, it seems like mostly he's just a guy that failed in Tough Latin America, got himself in the UFC, had some friends down at Alliance, is training there. When I look at this matchup and I really think to myself, Jason Novelli is 37, 38 years old, Pat. That's a late time to make your UFC debut. Now, this is his second fight, but in his UFC debut, he took on David Tamor, and he lasted all of 2 minutes, okay? Completely knocked out. So Polo Reyes is a guy that's going to go for it. He's going to swing for the fences. We know that about him. And because he's down in front of his hometown crowd and he's feeding off this energy, he's definitely going to go for it. When I look at Novelli's coming off a knockout loss. He's 38 years old. He's a little bit older. In a GPP, when you got to take that chance, you want Polo Reyes.
Okay, what about Marco Beltran?
Yeah, Marco Beltran. This is the biggest thing going for Beltran here. Joe Soto, his opponent, is taking this fight on 5 days' notice.
Ooh.
So imagine I told you, Pat. Let's say I just said, Pat, I'm sending you to Mexico City to do a football draft. okay? You'd be walking around and you'd be like, ooh, I'm tired, you know what I mean? Like, the air is so thin, it's hard to breathe. Now, in a couple of days, you'd be used to it, okay? A lot of these guys, some of them, Beneil Dariush, RDA, they went out 12 weeks in advance. Other guys like Alex Nicholson, at least they've went out 2-3 weeks in advance. Marcin Held went out 3-4 weeks in advance. This guy is taking the fight on 5 days' notice. He's not going 5 days out. He's taking the fight on 5 days' notice. So Joe Soto, he went 5 rounds at TJ Dillashaw. In the 5th round, he got knocked out. No blemish against him. His next fight against Anthony Burchak, he gets knocked out in the 1st round. Now, there was a fight from Bellator a couple years back against Joe Warren where he got knocked out. And I'm not saying whatsoever, because I'm a big Joe Soto fan, I'm not saying this guy threw a fight ever. And I would never say that. But there are people on the internet that do believe this guy looks for a way out.
In fairness, people on the internet say everything. Any opinion you could ever possibly have about anything exists on the internet.
Yeah, especially because I'm thinking people probably lost money on him at some point, and they're through the fight. But they'll point to certain things like the Anthony Burchak fight where he seems to just be moving and then he just collapses face down on the ground. The Joe Warren fight, he's winning and then he gets clunked and just like hits the deck, right? The TJ Dillashaw fight, he got kicked right in the head. How could you ever possibly throw that, right? I think the guy's a very supremely tough guy. His biggest thing is that he relies on his cardio to get the job done. So in his last fight against Chris Beal, he's losing the opening portions of the round, but the longer the fight goes, he tires Beal and he ends up getting the finish. His fight before that against Tanaka beats him the first 2 rounds, but he takes him to deep waters and he gets that finish. So he relies on that gas tank and that ability to go. But now you're taking the fight on 5 days' notice, 10,000 feet above sea level against an opponent who's originally from Mexico. And to make all of that even worse, he fights at 135 traditionally. He's pretty much always fought at 135 for the most part, other than a long time ago in Bellator. This fight, he's openly said, I can't make 35, so they're going to catch weight at 140. Some people might think that's going to benefit him because he's going to have a little bit of size on his opponent, but I don't think it's going to benefit him. I think he's literally getting off the couch here, taking a fight. He's got to get all the way down there. He's a tough guy. He ain't going to quit. He certainly ain't going to throw the fight. But if you're looking for GPP and you're looking for a guy that might get knocked out, he's got a bad history with sometimes getting that big shot landed on him. And when I look at Marco Beltran, training with Yair Rodriguez, living in Chicago now, really taking his game seriously, he's improving all over the place. Can he land that kill shot on Joe Bad Mofo Soto? Yeah, I think he can. And that's why for a GPP I'd go for.
That's a great nickname.
Yeah.
Last guy, Beneil Dariush, who I feel like you take every time he's on a card.
Beneil Dariush, and this is the biggest thing I've taken away from the new DK system, right? Because it's 6 guys, you got to take someone you're not even huge on. I think Magomedov is going to be Rashid Magomedov has got the goods to stuff the takedowns and hurt this guy. My biggest thing here is, though, a couple fights ago we talked about Albert Tumanov. Albert Tumanov is a very strong Russian guy, good striking acumen. As soon as Leon Edwards got him down, he was fish out of water, and he tired him. And late in that 3rd round, Leon Edwards scores that takedown, he gets that choke, and people were just dumbfounded, like, oh my God, Leon Edwards, like, I didn't see that coming. But it's like, yeah, you tire the guy and you exploit him. When I look at Beneil Dariush, first and foremost, his best skill, not his striking, not his highly decorated BJJ black belt, none of that. It's his mind. This guy's so smart. He can analyze and figure out fighters on the go. So Rashid Magomedov's living in Coconut Creek, Florida for this camp. He's going to Mexico a little bit late. Beneil Dariush, not only did he go 8 weeks out, Pat, apparently there's some mountain in Mexico, beyond Mexico City, that's like 18,000 feet, okay? So he's been training in these mountains with the guy in the headliner, Rafael Dos Anjos, and now he's spent 20 days there. He's now going to come down to 10,000 feet. So his body's going to be very, very, very properly acclimated. If Rashid Magomedov goes in there and wins the 1st round, and I expect him to win the 1st round, if he starts to tire and he succumbs a takedown here, then he's going to get Beneil Dariush on his back, and that's somewhere you do not want to be. Guy's really smart. I honestly think Rashid Magomedov, and I love the big Russian, I think he's going to get the job done. But when I think of guys who have a chance at finishing on a GPP and are good dog choices if you're looking for a dog to put money on, Beneil Dariush has always got a shot. Very hard to count this guy out.
All right. Cody Saftik. Check him out on Bookie Beatdown on Twitter at CJ Saftik. We will be back, so be on the lookout for a complete DraftKings breakdown of UFC 205. Stay tuned for that. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.